like you don't know anything about science. And that's the thing. We're having supposed experts. Elon Musk is not an expert in everything. He's
No,
not.
no, I agree.
And regardless, what did he actually invent? Can somebody tell me specifically what Elon Musk invented? The founder of Tesla. Tesla existed before that.
Yeah,
PayPal existed. Now, don't get me wrong, Elon is extremely smart within the private sector. It's the truth.
yeah,
Like he is very smart in that, and he is able to get things done with that. But I do think that, you know, you're a little stretched out with all the different like roles and things like that. It's like SpaceX, XAI, the app, you know, Tesla, even beyond that. Just looking at all these different businesses, it's like at a certain point, you know, we have to begin to question when those influences are counteracting each other and kind of influencing each other.
yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The whole attention economy thing, it is about. I think I don't remember if we made a video about this earlier, because I remember watching a Pierce Morgan episode, and even Pierce, like he had, conservatives and Democrats on, and even Pierce said, like, Joe Biden was an effective president. We outperformed every G7 country and every G20 country and employment, inflation, job growth. We outperformed every single country in all of those things. And
hmm.
because Joe Biden wasn't able to communicate that effectively, no one gives him any credit for it. And so, all of a sudden, all of these people have this negative idea of what the country is and where our economy is, even though after Joe Biden left and to the end of 2024, we had a 4% unemployment rate, one of the lowest all time. Inflation is sub 3%. CPI, PPI have all come back better than expected. He was averaging over $100,000 or 100,000 jobs every month for the jobs reports released by the Department of Labor. He was never able to effectively communicate that, yet he did such a great job. And even Pierce made like a comment saying like, well, like, he wasn't able to effectively do that. He's like, I mean, it may not have actually been him. I don't think that he was like, fully conscious the entire time, but I think his administration was the one that did it. But like at the end of the day, like his economy was the top performer out of, like I said, every G7 and every G20 country. So how is it that Donald Trump has managed to convince everybody that, prices don't matter now, but they mattered then because now the price of eggs is skyrocketing. I just saw Trader Joe's has limited the amount of cartons of eggs that you can buy. You can only buy one um, dozen of eggs. There's now surcharge at Waffle House. I mean, there are so many different things. Like what I mean, how is it that Donald Trump, like I said, managed to convince people prices were too high? Now prices are higher, and now he's like, well, prices don't matter. And the only thing that really matters is the fact that we're getting rid of all of this excess waste in the government. And don't get me wrong, right? Like there are I think my issue with Elon Musk has been that he hasn't been as transparent with what he's doing, and he's hired the craziest people. I think if he was working in tandem where he had like a 50% Democrats, 50% Republicans, and we had access to all of the government spending and the cutting that he is doing, I'd be all in favor for
I
that.
mean, if it went through some sort of committee and it was like actually like reputable and actually had some sort of authority to do those things, I
Right.
think I think for one, it would be great if they actually did a lot of those things. But like, let's say that SpaceX gets a deal from NASA or some government institution, and it's not the best deals, or it's not the cheapest price, or it's not the most the best technology or whatever the different argument is. Do you
Yeah.
think that he's going to cancel out those track contracts, you know?
Yeah.
Like, no.
Right.
Fraud's going to be anything I don't like.
Right.
It's the new woke. Like everything was woke at one time. Now everything's just going to be, well, that's fraud. That's fraud. Okay, you might not like the funding, but just because you don't like something or you don't like the organization that it's going to doesn't mean it's fraud.
Yeah.
And beyond that, like I don't think I think going back to like what matters and what doesn't matter, it's only what people are talking about as much that matters.
And
They're
that's
not talking about prices like that anymore. Why?
exactly.
Because they don't
Exactly.
care. They've never cared because now it's complex and we'll just wait a little bit and it'll be okay. And there's some, explanation for it. But in the past, explanations weren't good enough. And the past explanations were from a particular person that you didn't trust or you didn't like, so you didn't trust it, right? So you just said, nah, whatever. Like it's still an issue. But then when I guess maybe it's like the cultural like look towards Republicans for stability within the economy. When you're concerned about the economy, people tend to kind of think Republicans are better for that for some reason. I can't actually see the logic. Um, I think arguably when you see a lot of the things that he's doing, it's almost like, and he being Elon and Trump, but some of the things they're doing are destroying nonpartisan things that will put us ahead of the game. Like there's no capacity for us to compete with Chinese EVs or a lot of Chinese tech at large without these subsidies and without kind of the things that Biden had set up.
Yeah.
It's like they sit there and they deride like the government giving out funding and money and all these different things to these different, EV companies and different things like that, which I do find it interesting because like how do you think Tesla survived? Like
Right.
government handouts and government funding. But like I think we should get the whole negative notion that that's a bad thing. It's like that's how China's become more competitive and able to, begin to export a lot of their these cheap EVs and things like that. Like they sit there and they go in like and create industrial policy that is able to meet the needs that they want and with the strategic goals in mind of where they're headed, right? Like America doesn't do that because one, we're hands-off capitalist, right? Like God forbid we invest any money in anything, even though most of the technology that we have, there is some sort of government funding or government grants or something like that that helped some part of that be developed, right? Or just the stability of America, the culture, some aspect of that that was able to create that business or create that culture that made the business grow and things like that. Um,
Yeah. No, I think that's what is wild to me to kind of go back to what you were saying about how Republicans have somehow convinced a lot of people that they're better for the economy and it's because of deregulation. But I mean, we're kind of seeing what happens when you do start to deregulate, right? With everything that's happening with all of the plane crashes, right? We just had another plane crash. I'm blanking on which state it was, but a private jet had crashed and killed one person, and then four to five other people were injured. And then before that, we had that crash in Philadelphia, and then before that, we had that crash in DC with a commercial flight. I mean, we're kind of seeing the effects of Donald Trump just fired or made the head of the FAA resign, and suddenly we're starting to see like all of these issues um with all of these crashes, and like that's what happens with deregulation. It might very well I can admit it might very well make things a lot easier for companies to get things processed and passed, but when you start to deregulate too much, what happens is suddenly the safeguards are off and companies are able to stop giving you quality products. They're able to start giving you things that might harm you in the end. For example, for foods or drugs or whatever, you start to see like there's less regulation, less information given of side effects that might be taken. There are less hoops that they have to jump through in order to make sure things are both safe and effective. There it might be fake labeling on things, on saying like they can do this or that, or give you like a very um, uh, non-detailed version of a product that they're putting out that excludes all of the maybe negative side effects of whatever product it is. So it's just, I think, you know, when it comes to deregulation, like I said, I understand why it kind of stifles innovation, because at the end of the day, like it, I mean, there are certain things that need to be done in order. There are safeguards that need to be put up that take care of the American consumer. And
Hmm.
when you start to deregulate too much, what happens is suddenly companies have, since they have less regulation, they're able to give you subpar results, and those subpar results end up hurting people. And like I said, we saw
But
a
I
wide
mean,
scale with plane crashes. Go ahead.
when you work for when you work for moneyed interests like that, when you work for corporations and businesses, you would often see deregulation as being the solution.
Mhm.
And like nine times out of ten, the Republican takes the side of a corporation. And like it's like it isn't always in terms of, there's different variations now in some ways, but I do think that there is like the siding of like reading as like, Citizens United, a corporation is an entity. It's a entity that gets to conduct free speech, right?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you make it less regulatory on yourself and, get away with certain things? Because if you can do it and if the system lets you do it, you're gonna do it.
All right.
Um, I think we've seen that kind of play in time and time again with like whether it's political figures or just historical figures. If there's a will, there's a way. Um, but yeah.
Well, we are out of time today. Our next episode will be whether or not Chase gets deported. Yes, he is white, but he is liberal. So we'll see what happens. And I guess we will see you guys next time. Chase, as always, thank you for the conversation. Always enlightening, always fun, always engaging. And I love bouncing ideas off of you.
Mhm. Sounds good.
All righty. I will talk to you later, my friend.
Talk to you later.